my boy, my man, Stone Cold, Steve Austin. Last week it was 316 week. I told y'all one of my favorite moments, other than King of the Ring, was when he invents how he used the bedpan and smacked Vince in the head with the bedpan. I mean, I still talk to, a lot of the great guys who know wrestling. Jim Cornette, Jim Ross. They say Steve is arguably the greatest, most popular wrestler in wrestling history.
Hmm.
Although you can argue Undertaker, Cena, of course, there are a lot of great wrestlers that you can also argue as the GOAT. I still have Austin as my GOAT. What is y'all favorite Stone Cold moment?
Go ahead, champ.
Oh man, I love Stone Cold, man. Stone Cold was the reason why I started watching the WWE. I was a WCW guy. I was literally to the core WCW guy. But NWO, all those guys. But Stone Cold got me to watching the WWE. So big up to Stone Cold. I have to say, the moment where the Attitude Era truly began, in my humble opinion. In my humble opinion, the Attitude Era truly began at WrestleMania 13. Although he lost, that was his that was when the new generation of wrestling stopped. When the new generation era stopped, and that is when the Attitude Era truly began. There were some things in between that had attitude, but that is when he was on his way to becoming the face of the company. Because if anybody remembers correctly, right after WrestleMania, he wrestled The Undertaker, who had just won the WWE title at WrestleMania 13 as well, at A Cold Day in Hell in your house. I don't know if people remember that or not. And The Undertaker won, granted, but him and The Undertaker during that time was the two hottest commodities in wrestling at that point. And that is where the Attitude Era truly begins, man, with the blood and the sweat leaking down his face. And of all people, man, Ken Shamrock, who later became a WWE superstar, UFC legend, special guest referee in a submission match. That is arguably his greatest moment. Although he lost, that was when the Austin era, in my humble opinion, truly began.
Bret the Hitman
Because
Hart.
that is when he turned face, and that is when you start seeing what he really could do.
Yeah. And also, Champ, do you remember? You're talking about WrestleMania 13 against Bret the Hitman Hart, in which, by the way, Austin did not quit in that match.
No, he did
He
not
just
quit.
lost conscious. Do you remember Austin with what he said about Bret Hart? That also, if you put the letter S in front of Hitman, you have my exact opinion on Bret Hart
Mm-hmm.
and the promos. And he also talked about how much of a big break Bret Hart gave Steve Austin as well. So of course, WrestleMania 13, you can't discount WrestleMania 13 and how much Austin had respect to not only Bret Hart but also the Hart legacy. Rest his soul, Owen Hart. Rest his soul, Stu Hart. The Hart legacy. If you talk about the Manning in terms of the NFLs, when you think of wrestling, you got to include the Hart family. So, and Austin, man, like I said it before, and we had this conversation with Kieran. He helped save that company
Yes, he did.
when that company was at its low point because they were
Yes.
going to, remember, they had to take loans just in order to make payroll. And with Bret the Hitman Hart, he could have left. I watched the documentary. He could have left and joined WCW. He could have went for a 3 year, 2.8 million per year, which at that point in 96, that's a lot of money. You get 2.8 million, not only that, including royalties. So if you do the math, 3 years for 9 million, 3 million per year. But instead, he decided to stay for WWE at the time for a 20-year deal for $10.5 million. And then go ahead, champ.
Oh, my bad. I was just breathing in, but I was going to add something after the fact.
But when I look at Austin, man, he helped save that company. Even though there's DX, because of what they did. Like I said before, and champ, you would know this, Luis. You know this better. If you did the DX signs back in the day, you would get punished. I mean, if you did them in school, you would definitely be in detention at that time. But when you look at Austin, man, the rivalry with him and Mr. McMahon, and I told Frank this before on the air. No matter how you think about Vince McMahon, you can't tell the story of wrestling without him. It's hard. You can't do it because of how influential he's meant to the wrestling business and how influential he's been to a lot of guys, not just Steve, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, a lot of other great wrestlers. And when I look at Steve, man, and I listen to Nature Boy Ric Flair, he, and you can watch this on YouTube, he talked about his GOAT. He said it's not necessarily who did it the best, but who did the most for the company. He talked about Steve. And he made some very valid points about Steve because he retired 38, and of course because of the neck injury that he suffered from Owen Hart. But in a pop culture genre, Steve was that guy. And to this day, I said this, champ. Them Austin 316 t-shirts still hot to
Flying off
this
the
day.
shelf.
Flying like crazy. And
Yeah.
with the promos. So I mean, Steve was that dude. But Luis, you want to go?
Man, it will always be when the night when Mankind won the WWF title, just Stone Cold, just willingly, just returning casually, big pop, and just cheering everybody known to man right to the face. Just you get a chair, you get a chair, you get a chair. Hits my V in the face, boom, just casually costs him the title, puts Mankind over him. And then that's the moment WCW dies just casually. He just casually walked down there and kicked ass.
Mm-hmm.
I just love how he just walks away like, eh, I'll see him again.
Because he knows he's gonna get the attention, and also with the King of the Ring, not just when he said Austin 316, I just whipped your ass. The other one, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. When it comes to, go ahead, Luis.
Also, I was gonna say the beer promo. I drunk a beer. I had
Yes.
another beer. 3 beers, 4 beers, 5 beers.
And champ, you
It's so
mentioned the beer
good.
truck in which he sprayed beer on the corporate ministry.
Yeah. Well, he sprayed The Rock, Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
That was
Everybody.
the beer bath was something else. But if I could add something to this PSP, if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
imagine this. I want people to imagine this because I hope I'm not the only one thinking about this. What if, and this is a big what if in wrestling history, what if Bret said, you know what, Vince, no matter what you do with me right now, I'm going to keep staying with the WWE. I don't want to go to WCW. Then everything else goes the way it goes. Remember, Shawn Michaels got hurt. So what if Bret Hart is still there and they're able to rekindle that rivalry when Stone Cold is at his peak? Do y'all think that would have been something else, something special to behold all over again?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned about Shawn Michaels because again, he wanted to leave to go to WCW. Remember, I told you this, champ. After when he dropped the belt to Stone Cold at WrestleMania 14, and you've been very adamant, Undertaker would have done something to Shawn Michaels. You've told me that, but I also told you, and Jim Ross has confirmed it. They paid Shawn Michaels $750,000
It's a
to do
lot of money
basically
back
nothing.
then. It's a
Yep,
lot of money.
Yeah, that's a
to
lot of
do
money
basic
nowadays.
to do basically
Still a lot
nothing.
of money.
To do basically nothing in 4 years. Four. 4 years. And then and because of two reasons. One, Vince viewed Shawn Michaels very highly, and he was afraid that he was going to go to WCW to join his other members from the clique, Scott Hall, rest his soul, and of course Kevin Nash. So, I mean, you do make a very compelling point in that regard, though.
Yeah, we could have saw another Bret Hart rivalry, all another Bret Hart versus Stone Cold. And because remember, you have to remember during that time, yes, people were watching wrestling, but it was not at the level that it was when Stone Cold really started to blow up. So if you could imagine Bret Hart being in that mix, being a main event guy and facing Stone Cold, it would have basically been kind of like how it was when, tradition meets new culture. You always, even back in the day in wrestling, you always had the traditional guy versus the guy that has new culture. You saw that with Andre and Hulk Hogan because, Andre personified, the old school territories. He personified the old school territories. And then you had Hulk Hogan, the guy who personified new pop culture, rock and roll, new image, the WWE. So you've seen that throughout history. So it would have been interesting to see the last remnants of the new generation against the Attitude Era in great fashion because we never got, people could speak, but we never got to see truly that passing of the torch moment where the new generation passed the torch to the Attitude Era. We got to see where the golden era, we got to see the golden era, however, which way you want to say it. We got to see where the golden era passed it to the new generation when Hulk Hogan dropped the belt to Yokozuna. Granted, Yokozuna was not a face at the time, but he was part of the new generation. We got to see where the old school territories dropped the belt to, they got to see where Andre dropped the belt to Hulk Hogan as far as, the old territory meets the new golden age. You got to see that.